Good day. I'm Nandini. I'm a virtual volunteer with the Tabitha Empowerment Center, and I'm joining you all from United Kingdom. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all for this much anticipated Let's Chat series. That is an initiative by the online and on-site virtual volunteers at the Tabitha Empowerment Center. The today's Let's Chat series is about confronting femicide, examining justice and administration of Criminal Justice Act. The series is dedicated to igniting meaningful conversations around gender issues with focus on exploring their complex intersections. I'm honored to moderate this edition, and I look forward to the dynamic insights that we are gonna get today. Uh, it's my pleasure on welcoming our distinguished guest, Mr. Fikih Obaro, who is a member of, who was called at Nigeria Barr on 30th November 2010 and has over a decade of experience across development and corporate sectors. He's a human rights practitioner, gender and social inclusion expert with vast program and project experiences in governance, security, gender, women and children rights, and policy advocacy. He currently serves as a national program manager for the International Federation for Women Lawyers, FIDA Nigeria, where he leads interventions aligned with organization's mission and strategic goals. Mr. Obaro is also certified by UNICEF on the prevention of sexual exploitation and abuse and holds an advanced legal rights certification. Uh, uh, we are extremely grateful for you, sir, for joining us and accepting our invitation.
Thank you.
So today we are just gonna start this discussion, and I'm gonna start by asking you a few questions. If everybody who has joined, if you have any questions, you can just drop them down in the comment section below. The first question I have for you, Mr. Obaro, is on the relation of understanding femicide in Nigeria, and how would you define femicide and what distinguishes it from other forms of gender-based violence in Nigeria?
Okay, I want to thank Tabitha Empowerment Center for this ability to speak on general issues and issues that touches the life of Nigerians, not only Nigerians but also for citizens globally, for those that are participating. At least my moderator here is not living in Nigeria, but she is moderating outside Nigeria. So it's a topic basically that tries to spear citizens' participation, interrogates issues that borders on the rights of Nigerians, and in this case, females. And so, going back to your question, which has to do with what is femicide, how do we look at femicide, and looking at femicide in Nigeria. Gender because of their own gender, because they are females. And so any act that has an intention or supposes an intention in killing females, it can be classified as femicide. The difference that is that femicide deals with killing of females. Gender-based violence basically is violence that is perpetrated against either gender, either male or female. Therefore, for gender-based violence, you can have violence that are perpetrated against males, violence that are perpetrated against men, violence that are perpetrated against boys, and violence that is perpetrated against women and girls. And so it's a general concept in terms of violence that is perpetrated against any gender. And that violence could be physical, sexual, physical, sexual, emotional, harmful, interracial, as long as it deals or it's a violence perpetrated against either gender. You can term that as what? Gender-based violence. And then when you go to the forms of gender-based violence, it tells you all types of forms of gender-based violence. However, in Africa, gender-based violence, is perpetrated basically or mostly against women and girls, and that has to do with power imbalance, has to do with patriarchy, has to do with cultural issues, has to do with human rights issues, has to do with issues of tradition, social norms. And therefore, when you link it to femicide, the same issues that perpetuate this type of violence in Africa also affects femicide, especially in Nigeria. Femicide, basically, which is an act of killing women and girls, it has, as I said, hops on the word intention. There has to be an intention. It has to be intentional. And when you are doing that against women and girls, you are doing that because of what? Power imbalance. Power imbalance, how culture has, stereotyped women and girls to be seen as second-class citizens in the society, how citizens have decided to, step down on the rights of women and girls and thinking that women and girls are instruments, for such perpetration or for the perpetration of those acts. And that is why you look at femicide, being on the increase. Therefore, femicide has linkages with gender-based violence. Femicide has strong connection to gender-based violence. The reasons and the actions for gender-based violence in Africa or in Nigeria are the same reasons that spur or that promotes the acts of femicide basically in Nigeria. And then if you want to talk about the types of femicide and why femicide basically is rampant in Africa and the rest, I would say that femicides can be grouped into two major examples and two major issues. Femicide is grouped one into in Africa and in Nigeria, looking at our context, ritual killings. Ritual killing. And so when there is an act, to kill or to disseminate or to extinct a particular gender, female, as a result of the fact that such bodies can be used for ritual killings, can be used for ritual purposes, and can be used for purposes that can emanate illegitimate and illegal things and illegal uses. Such killings basically is intentionally perpetrated and targeted against females. So ritual killing is a major and current example of femicide in Nigeria. Another example, a real example of femicide in Nigeria is organ trafficking. And so when you also intentionally, and deliberately target women, their parts, their organs, towards exploiting them, selling them, and utilizing them for other uses that are not lawfully allowed or lawfully permitted. That also of femicide basically in Nigeria. Yeah, so you can look at the other areas and the other issues basically, which has to do with other forms and spreads of gender-based violence, intimate partners violence, and other issues basically that you could stem and you could fix them as femicide basically. But for me, when you look at the intention and look at the perpetration of the acts, ritual killings and organ trafficking are very, very significant examples of femicide and its operationalization in Nigeria. Thank you.
Yes, so as you have already highlighted that these are some factors that also cause rise in femicide in Nigeria, can you highlight some trends or statistics that you might remember that are in Nigeria in relation to femicide right now?
Okay, I think recently you could have heard of the black sheep story in Aba of a particular man who invited some ladies, to his location, and at the end of the day, these ladies were missing, and till today, the families are asking for justice, one Ghanaian and one Nigerian. That's it's I think his name is Andrew, and the man also got shot during the time, or whether he killed himself or he was killed by the law institutions is on that question for another day. But now the man is no longer here to answer for his crimes. But when investigation were profiled into this issue, it had indicated that the man had been in this business of using and killing females for ritual purposes. A man has been in that business of using women, girls for ritual purposes. And so he entices them for them to come to his house, and then at the end of the day, most of them disappear. There have also been testimonies, of very few lucky ladies that had entirely met with the man, but somehow escaped from his house, or from his custody, or from his detention, as it were. And so that is a clear example of femicide. It's a clear example of femicide. The man does not deal with men. The man does not kill men. The man does not attract men. He attracts basically women. He attracts basically girls.
Right.
And so that is a clear example, of femicide. And then you also have other forms of killings, like the Yahoo Plus that you talk about, where a lot of guys that are into businesses that are fraudulent, and against the state, try to also use ladies to renew their power, renew their sources, renew their vectors and those things. You understand? This is also another example, and a clear example, of femicide. Using young ladies, as a bit towards making much money, and making monies, as the case may be. It's also an example, that has been rampant, and that is being rampant in Nigeria, of femicide. You can also take examples of women or girls with disabilities, being used and targeted for issues, for ritual purposes, or for ritual killings, or for ritual settlements and the rest. These are very paramount and are very, very dominant, in areas, especially in local communities in Nigeria. And so you see women and girls that are being used basically for this particular purpose. It's also another, form of femicide. You can also see ladies, especially those with albinism, that are they feel that those with albinism can provide money and can produce money, for local communities, for men that are interested and are, equipped in ensuring that they can get monies from illegal means, and therefore they want to use the blood of females with albinism to renew their wealth, to renew power, and the rest. These are forms, and great forms, basically, of femicide. And to me, these various for areas in Nigeria, and it's also because of subjugation of women's rights. Now, we could ask ourselves the question: why are males not accepted by the gods? Why are males not accepted by the deities? Why are males not accepted by even those that are into organ trafficking and sell organ trafficking parts? Why are the parts of women more expensive, supposedly, than the parts of men? So when you try to interrogate these issues, you find out that it has a systemic pattern and a systemic barrier to subjugate women, even when they are alive and when they are dead. And so these are great examples that abound, of femicide, basically, in Nigeria. If you're looking at issues of intimate partners violence, you find out that a lot of examples of intimate partner violence, a lot of men may have killed their wives, may have killed their girlfriends or their spouses, and the rest. And so, in some ways, you could classify some of those examples based on the recent statistics we have as femicide. But as I said, femicide deals basically with the intention. And so it's a little bit dicey in intimate partners violence. It's a bit dicey, and this is my own belief and my own argument. It's a bit dicey in intimate partners violence to determine that all cases of intimate partners violence that ends with deaths, it's a result of femicide. I don't really think so. So it has to do with the intention, basically, and the intention would be the one that would determine whether the death that arises from intimate partners violence is a femicide or is a murder.
Right.
So we have to draw that distinction. But however, by the time you look at it, from these other areas that have elucidated above, ritual killings, organ trafficking, other areas and other issues that subjugate the rights of women, and girls, basically, then you can see that femicide is on the rise, is on the increase in this part of Nigeria and Africa. Thank you.
Right. So I think by understanding all of this, there's one major thing that comes up, that there is definitely a gap in the legal and judicial responses. So my next question to you will be that the Administration of Criminal Justice Act was enacted to reform the criminal justice system. And in what ways ways has this helped in addressing the cases of femicide, if at all?
Okay, I think that's a very, very important question. Now, there is this important gap or lacuna with femicide.
Mhm.
Femicide, as we stated, is a deliberate intentional act of killing females. And this is perpetrated against them because they are females. But femicide is not categorized as a crime. It does not have its own criminal elements. It's not categorized as its own crime that has its own penalties and has its own punishments. So therefore, in the Nigerian legal system, femicide is still seen as murder, and it's murder. And the penalties for murder that are enshrined in relevant criminal codes, the Administration of Criminal Justice Act and the rest would what permit for it, because it's not particularly categorized as its own crime. And so that is a big lacuna. Linking it to the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, the Administration of Criminal Justice Act does not recognize the word femicide. However, the Administration of Criminal Justice Act recognizes the rights of women, recognizes the right of women. And I could just go on to provide some of the provisions of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act that tries to protect the rights of women, and tries to ensure that women are given, says. And then I'm going to link that also to issues of if a person has committed murder, and how are you going to have speedy trials, for on those cases, towards ensuring that the victims and the families of the victims basically have some sort of closure or have some sort of succor, and we're going to look at that. But if when addressing this, we can't really basically say that femicide basically is recognized on its own as a crime in Nigeria. So femicide is seen basically, as a process. It's seen basically as a part of crime. It's seen basically as murder, of which a female supposedly is the victim of such murders, and not really that it has its own penalties, sanctions, and has its own separate definition and understanding. And so basically, if we're looking at the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, it's a very novel provision, a novel act that was promulgated in the year 2015, and basically is trying to ensure that there is seamless administration of justice in Nigeria. It creates that the opportunities for there to be speedy trials, for justice to be seen to be fair and to be heard and to be known, in Nigeria. It also tries to improve the criminal justice system and criminal justice institutions, which are the courts, the law enforcement agencies, the prosecutors, towards ensuring that criminal justice is administered, and to the best of the abilities of both the state and also the citizens. And the citizens have, interest in the criminal justice system, because they see that the criminal justice system is working. And that is what the Administration of Criminal Justice Act has come to do. It has come to create, such enabling environments. But the issue then is also that we also have an issue. So even if the FCGA or the Administration of Criminal Justice Act is operational, does it mean that citizens, especially women, have confidence in the Administration of Criminal Justice Act and laws? Does it mean that because of the ACGA, women can go to court and that can be convinced that if they are in court, their cases will be heard dutifully and will be heard quickly and speedily, and justice will be seen to be done and dispersed accordingly? These are other issues that need to be interrogated and discussed some other time and some other days. But for us, basically, we're going to look at the Criminal Justice Act and how it has supported and protected the rights of women in various ways. And so, for example, in section 7 of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, the Administration of Criminal Justice Act basically talks about the fact that a person cannot be arrested in lieu for an offense that has been committed. in Nigeria, basically, you find out that, especially looking at subjugation of women's rights, a man could commit a crime and would run off, would take off from his home, would disappear from his surroundings and from his communities, and the women who are the wives of the men, or the women who are family members of the men, are seen ordinarily to be the first target of arrest. So they arrest these women and tell them, produce your husbands, produce your sons. If you don't produce your husband and produce your sons, you are going to be in detention. This is something that a defect that the Administration of Criminal Justice Act came to cure. And so because of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, it has stated that if you don't see the man, don't arrest the woman, don't arrest the wife, don't arrest the daughter, don't arrest the sister. You must see the perpetrator and go after the perpetrator. So it has tried also to improve our investigation system. It has tried to improve our intelligence gathering, thus ensuring that the perpetrators are to be arrested. The wives or their sisters or their spouses are not to be arrested on their behalf. So that is something also that needs to be done. Section 9 of the ACGA also talks about search. It talks about the fact that when there is a need for the search of a person, in terms of searching properties or searching items to know if they are criminally taken or criminally taken or criminally extorted, or if there are items that needs to further investigation and needs to be searched by the law enforcement agencies and the rest. Search basically is done by either gender. And so women, female police officers or female law enforcement officers are expected to search female suspects. Male law enforcement agencies officers are also expected to search male suspects. So it has abolished the period whereby a man can come and search a woman indecently, and a woman can also come and touch a man indecently. So it's something that is a novel provision of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act. And we can also look at the Administration of Criminal Justice Act in section 167, which talks about the fact that women cannot be shorties. Women can be shorties. And that is something that has also limited women's rights, basically. And so women before were denied shortyship. They were denied the fact that they could shorty, their husbands, their brothers, their friends, and the rest. They looked at it that women basically do not have the economic power and do not have places and positions in the society, to shorty, suspects in court. But through the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, the rights of women as shorties, has also be promoted, and that also links to the right of women to own properties and to have properties and to possess properties. It's something that the Administration of Criminal Justice Act has also tried to also still bring up and ensure that some of these issues are being taken care of. And then also we can also look at the Administration of Criminal Justice Act in terms of also the fact that if a woman peradventure is arrested and is also arrested and is detained by the by law enforcement agencies, she has the right, to make a statement in front of her legal practitioner. If the legal practitioner is not there, basically, she would withdraw or restrain from writing that statement until the legal practitioner, is there. So that is another good advantage of it. Now, looking at it and now taking it basically to issues of femicide. When femicide occurs and the husband or the perpetrator, whether he is the one involved in ritual killing or organ trafficking, or it's as a result of intimate partners violence, and this person has been, or through investigation, have been seen that he had that intention in killing or in maiming or in extincting the women, how can we have speedy trials, in courts, looking at the present criminal justice provisions that we have in Nigeria? So we've looked at it that in terms of, for example, Section 232 of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act talks about protecting witnesses. So for witnesses that have seen or observed, eyewitnesses, circumstantial evidence, or circumstantial witnesses that have gotten information relating to that, the Administration of Criminal Justice Act tries to protect these witnesses, and they could decide to protect the witnesses by ensuring that their full names or their real names are not provided, are not identified. They could also do that by ensuring that there could be virtual hearings so that these witnesses can speak up, speak up and give evidence on these issues. They could also be the fact that the witnesses may not be present in open courts. It could also be that the witnesses, even if they are present in open courts, could wear face masks so that they could not be identified. So these are some of the provisions that try to protect women, that try to protect witnesses that could have witnessed issues of femicide, in the courts. So it's something that we need to also praise, and also ensure that these particular acts and the provisions of this act keeps on working, in Nigeria. We can also look at section 396, subsection 3 and 4, which talks about the need for day-to-day trial. That if there is a case of femicide which is now part of the large murder and it's in court, then there has to be day-to-day trials. There has to be trials that should be done daily towards ensuring that these cases are quickly heard and are quickly dispensed with. However, when day-to-day trial is not possible, then the courts can give a maximum of 5 adjournments during the course of the trial. And therefore, when you find out that these adjournments are more than 5 and the case has not gotten to a logical conclusion, then it calls for caution, it calls for interrogation, it calls also for a review of the particular provisions of this ACGA that talks about this kind of thing also. Then we also look at something else that can also ensure speedy trial. It's also in section 396 subsection 7. That section 396 subsection 7 talks about the fact that if a judge who is trying a court is promoted to a higher court, it talks that further that judge can come back to this original court or for this court of trial and finish off that case. And so it prohibits the case from starting de novo, which is starting afresh from the very beginning. So consider the fact of its victim of femicide who the case is in court for 2 years or for 3 years, and then the judge has been promoted to a higher court, and then a new judge comes in to say, I need to hear the facts of this matter again, and I want to restart the case from the very beginning. How can that help to support closure, for the families of the victim of femicide? You will find out that the families, would be disoriented. The families would be in despair. Be happy about such situations. And so what this tries to do basically is that it tries to ensure that if a judge is on a particular matter, he has to finish that matter, provide judgment on that issue before he continues his job at a higher court. Therefore, he is going to combine both his work in hearing trials at both the trial court and also the higher court. He must finalize the issues in the trial court, while he's also handling fresh issues or fresh cases in a higher court. So it's something that he has tried to have a strike of balance towards ensuring that the administration of criminal justice, criminal justice is improved upon and the procedures are well, expatiated upon. And then we also have to look at issues of bail. And so if you're looking at issues of bail and you're looking at the fact that the perpetrator who is now the suspect, is in court and he needs bail. First of all, femicide is a capital, offense. It's grouped under the offense of murder, which is a capital offense. And because it's a capital offense, bail cannot just be given on loose conditions. It has to be given on very stringent conditions. Therefore, Section 161 of the ACGA of the Administration Criminal Justice Act provides basically for bail, but it has to be on issues that are very stringent, issues that are very, very, important, such as e-health. E-health is something that can make the judge of a high court grant bail. You also have to look at issues of the fact that the person could have been arraigned for more than a year without trial. And that's also, it also provides the fact that the suspect can be granted bail. He also has to talk about the fact that if investigation has been on for a very long time, there's also the need, for such suspects, to be granted bail. And there are other areas that we can look at, but for want of time, I think I will stop with these particular areas of how the Administration of Criminal Justice Act is trying to protect the rights of women while also ensuring that where cases of femicide, which is part of the broader murder, if they are brought in court, there are speedy trials, and that can ensure that justice is seen to be served and dispensed with, in our Nigeria judicial system. Thank you.
That was very insightful. Thank you so much, Mr. Obaro. But I feel that even though there are a lot of provisions that that have helped these cases, but there might be some critical gaps when it comes to implementation of ACJ. So can you just give some more insights about that?
Okay, so as we stated, basically, for some of these good novel provisions, if they are not critically, followed by all criminal justice actors, then they will become provisions that are stated in the books and that are not being replicated and operational, within the Nigerian criminal justice system. And as we stated before, one of the fundamental pillars of femicide, in Nigeria, basically, it's gender, social norms and gender stereotypes. Um, if you find an investigating officer who is a male investigating the case of femicide, due to patriarchal nature, cultural issues, and social normalization, and such persons may not take case seriously. And if that person doesn't go into detailed investigation, then you may not have the foundation. The foundation for a good trial may not be established. And so it also has to do with social norms. It has to do with the fact that the person, may have normalized violence. The person may have normalized issues of feminicide, or the person may downplay issues of feminicide. It also works that way. It also has to do with orientation. If the judges or the trial judges or the trial magistrates do not have the same orientation or have a mixed orientation about, issues of femicide, then they may not put in their bets also in ensuring that even these provisions of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act has life, in them. Also, if issues of patriarchy are paramount and you see that a man who is a trial judge is the one trying the case of a femicide, then the person may not really give the full backing of the law, on issues of femicide. You could find that at the end of the day, you could see issues of reduced sentences. You could have issues of reduced sentences. You could have issues of even of multiple adjournments. You could also have issues of discharge and acquittal. Because the person has not, or the man or the person in question is still within, still linked into this patriarchy system, or is being embedded into the patriarchy system. Therefore, he may not understand the goal or the light in femicide in these particular issues, as the case may be. And then also, there are also institutional issues, that can also be gaps, basically. Institutional issues, when you don't have enough courts to try these cases, when you don't have lack of staffing, when you don't have funds provided by government, some of all these issues would keep on abounding, because if you don't have conducive environments, then how basically can you try issues of murder and femicides in the courts? We're also looking at issues of witness protection. How effective can you protect witnesses? Is also something that needs to be talked about. Therefore, how can the state protect witnesses? And then how can the state also provide compensation, for victims of femicides? It's also something that needs to be talked about. How can that compensation work? what are the methodologies in ensuring that it works, and at the end of the day, can such compensation provide or lead to closure, on these issues. These are some of the areas and some of the gaps that we need to look at. But the major and the fundamental gap is that, as I stated earlier, femicide basically is not categorized as a criminal offense. So as long as it's not categorized as a criminal offense, it falls under the larger purview of murder in Nigeria.
Thank you for that. So my next question for you is, what roles do you think law enforcement agencies play in investigating and prosecuting femicide cases? And do you think they are equipped to handle such sensitive matters at this point?
Well, law enforcement agencies basically, by the word law enforcement, are expected to enforce the law. They are expected to investigate and hand over the cases through their investigation to the prosecutors and to prosecute. So it's their law, it's their job, it's their role, it's their responsibility, and nobody's going to do that for them. That's something that needs to be clear about it. Nobody's going to do the work of law enforcement agencies. It's their work to do it. All what they need to do is to ensure that there has to be synergy, with other actors, criminal justice actors, and they also have to provide a system whereby citizens can have trust in them. And if the law enforcement agencies are not conscientized, if there is no orientation, if there are no reorientation on their work, on their job, on their responsibilities, and how they look at issues of femicide, then you don't expect a full and proper investigation from law enforcement agencies on these issues. Are they equipped? I think there is need for more training, capacity strengthening, programs and workshops for them. Especially on issues of gender-based violence and in extension issues of femicide. There is need for that. They need more capacity strengthening, on these particular issues. Are all officers of the law enforcement agencies basically, do they have knowledge on gender-based violence and the attribute forms, and also how to prevent and also how to investigate issues of gender-based violence? I think the answer is no. They do not have such knowledge. Probably very few could have it, but those few have not cascaded those knowledge back to or the generality of law enforcement agencies. Therefore, there has to be an intentional drive towards ensuring that we get law enforcement agencies to have an understanding of these issues. And when they have an understanding of these issues, basically, they will be able to investigate issues of femicide, issues of gender-based violence, broadly, as the case may be. By the time you bring issues of femicide to law enforcement agencies, because of the cultural and social orientation that they have, they look at it and say, this is a woman's issue, it's a woman issue, now women's issues, basically. And by the time they trivialize and they casualize issues of these, you find out that issues of investigation basically may not be taken very, very seriously. And so they don't have the training, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the expertise, and we believe that this is a time they need to, find themselves. They need to get the orientation, they need to get the trainings, they need to understand, also change their belief system, And by the time some of these things are done, then we could have a fair and a smooth system where issues of femicide are being reported and are being investigated. Also, it also has to do with protection of witnesses. I've also talked about that previously before. The law enforcement agency, can they be trusted with information? Can they be trusted with evidence? Can they be trusted also in having and doing a thorough investigation? There is the trust deficit between the Nigerian populace, between the Nigerian citizens and the law enforcement agencies. Therefore, until that trust gap is being narrowed and the belief of Nigerian citizens is restored in the law enforcement agencies, I very much doubt that law enforcement agencies are equipped, to investigate issues of femicide.
Yeah, Thank you so much. I think that makes it much more clear for everybody listening. I feel that there might be something that the community leaders, activists can work together on when it comes to this. And how do you think they can work together when it comes to make combating femicide more effectively and making sure that the judiciary and law enforcement is working more effectively?
Okay. Yeah, I think it's important that we need to get in community leaders and other stakeholders into the conversation because, as I said, femicide is rooted in deep cultural and societal issues. It's femicide. It's as a result of the society,
Mm, right.
how the society has normalized issues of subjugation of women and subjugation of women's rights. That is what has brought about the prevalence of issues of gender-based violence and in extension femicide. Therefore, for this to work, there has to be a system where community leaders can work basically with other actors in ensuring that issues of femicide are being addressed even at their own local levels. Therefore, how can community leaders, you know, come together and agree amongst themselves that issues of gender-based violence is wrong? How can they also provide systems in their communities that try to protect the rights of women and girls in their own communities? How can they also try to ensure that they also become agents of change? They also becomes agents, that leads in response on gender-based violence in their communities. How can they become first responders, on issues of gender-based violence in their communities, and how can they work and assist the Nigerian police in investigation
Mm,
on issues of gender-based violence and femicides. These are some of the areas and some of the issues where community leaders need to engage constructively with these particular actors. How can they also ensure that they don't come in and on issues of femicide and they scare away witnesses that are members of their communities from testifying in courts or for providing or for providing evidence, in courts? How can they also ensure that their communities and their palaces are safe spaces and safe havens whereby even witnesses can be protected even in their communities and palaces without the fear or repercussions of them witnessing or providing testimonies or providing evidence against perpetrators or suspects of femicide. Therefore, these are some of the areas and some of the issues. And unless there is a cultural reorientation
mm.
on these issues and community leaders shape their belief system, then we and protect and their communities is important and essential towards leading and combating issues of femicide in their communities and in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you. Going to the next part, I would like to ask you, what support structures do you think are in place for the families of femicide victims, and how can these be strengthened?
Support systems.
Yeah.
Support systems basically it comes from various ways. It comes from the family,
Mm,
goes to the community, goes to the states, and we can institutionalize support systems. And institutionalized support systems basically the Nigerian Criminal Justice Act basically ought to be a support system, ought to be a support system
mm,
that that families of victims can come to the court and that they can also ensure that there are trials and speedy trials, of issues of femicide or in the larger scale murder in courts, and that justice is being seen to be done and dispensed with, and that perpetrators of femicide are being arrested, prosecuted, and are being sentenced according to the laws. It's it would provide a major support, for the victim that has already suffered, issues, of femicide, in Nigeria, and that it would also serve as a deterrent, to other, persons that perpetrate femicide, or gender-based violence, in Nigeria. The law basically is the support system. The law basically is what they need to leverage upon in terms of ensuring that there is support. Also, compensation, as I stated, to victims, and how it's going to work, and how the law is going to ensure that such compensation is being done either by the state or by the perpetrator, who pays, those compensation, as part of his punishments, for that perpetration. It's also something that is also a support system that needs to be that needs to be strengthened, that needs to be pushed, that needs to be enhanced, towards ensuring that the victims also find the succor, the families of the victims have succor and have closure. Also, the issues of witnesses and protection of witnesses, that will go a long way in ensuring that the cases and the evidence that is being provided is tenable and is substantial, that can also ensure that the perpetrator does not go free from those offenses. Is also a support, system also that when done, and basically the families of the victims can also see that they get justice, and that justice is being denied. So it's not denied. Therefore, the ability to provide support systems, the ability for the government also to work in ensuring that they intentionally, categorize issues of femicide as its own crime, draw out the characteristics and the criteria for femicide, and also the punishments, for femicide, is going to be, a huge succor, and it's also going to be a major support proof that government is interested on issues of femicide, and that issues of femicide can be tried and justice can be dispensed and delivered, and that the perpetrators of the perpetrators of femicide and gender-based violence, in extension, basically, are seen to suffer the penalties and sentences that are prescribed by the acts and by the laws in Nigeria.
Okay. So this, Mr. Obaro, brings me to last question that I have for you for today. It's how can the trauma-informed care and psychological support be integrated into the criminal justice process for survivors and family of femicide victims?
Great. We can integrate it into the criminal justice system by ensuring that our laws are survival-centered. So what we see basically is that we have laws in Nigeria that are right-based. Right-based. It's all about pursuing and enhancing the rights of citizens, enhancing the rights of the perpetrator, enhancing the rights also of the victim. Those are our laws are hinged on a rights-based system. Therefore, for us to have trauma-informed care and trauma-informed care and psychological support and some of all these areas and the rest, then our laws have to be reviewed towards ensuring that they are more survival-centered.
Okay.
They are more survival-centered. And it has to. We have to review the laws to ensure that they are survival-centered, because you cannot make a claim when there is no provision for such a claim.
Okay. Right.
And government itself cannot bring out policies in place which is in conflict with the laws. Therefore, the first area for trauma-informed care and PSS for victims of femicide has to come through with the law. The law has to be reviewed to accommodate these issues. It also has to be reviewed towards ensuring this. That it also goes back to the victim compensation fund. It goes back to the victim compensation fund. It's also a way, of providing psychological support, trauma-informed care. If we're going to have trauma-informed care and it is being integrated into the laws, what funds are we going to use in ensuring that trauma-informed care is operational, if not the victim compensation funds? So we have to see how we can link some of these issues before together, and also ensure that we have a legal framework that can enhance trauma-informed care and psychosocial support in our laws that can now make it mandatory and operational and enforceable, for victims of femicide and gender-based violence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Obaro. It was a very insightful event. At this point, we are open to any questions. If anybody has them, you can drop them down in comment sections. And I would just read out some comments of people that they might have added to what we have said. Like, I can see a comment saying that the systems will change with consistent stakeholder transformation, and it must be a holistic way and address the root causes. They want that the judiciary should address the root causes too. And the total, another comment says that the overall uh, work of judiciary is to work on it. And that's all that we have discussed today. So if there is anything else that you would like us to add, please let me know. And I can see that I believe GLADS has written that with the rise of femicide cases globally and in Nigeria, we require to approach the things collectively and uh, have an international and intentional approach towards it. So thank you everybody for joining. If anybody has any other questions, you can drop them down. If not, thank you so much, Mr. Obaro, for joining us today. It was lovely talking to you, and it was very insightful for me. Uh, in in my opinion, I think you made a lot of the questions seemed you answered them with so much of ease that it made me feel very uh, very amazing that I got a chance to do that for you. There is one question which I've received right now, which is what procedures can be adopted to take this message to the grassroots? Sir, would you like to answer it?
What procedures, can you please repeat it
If
again? What procedures can what?
What procedures can be adopted to take this message to the grassroots level?
Okay, basically, it's as we stated, it has to do with it has to do with value orientation.
Mm.
It also has to do with cultural orientation, and therefore, for you to take this to the grassroots, you must engage positively with the community leaders.
Right.
It's important. If they don't have the buy-in, if they don't have the buy-in, if they don't have the support, if their own mindsets are not changed, if they cannot change their own cultural orientations or begin a transformation from their own palaces and from their own areas, it won't get positive results, at the grassroots level, because at the end of the day, even if you try to change the grassroots, look at their cultural leaders as custodians of culture that has already been ingrained in them. So you cannot change the grassroots support base and have a lacuna provided with the cultural leaders who are also holding on to their tradition and cultures, that subjugates women and girls' rights. Therefore, approaching it from the community angle is important. Engaging with the cultural leaders and speaking to them about the norms, the effects of femicides, and also trying to ensure that they have an understanding of it, and they also get the buy-in, and they want to stand, as advocates against issues of femicide and against gender-based violence is critical in engaging the grassroots. Once you get the buy-in of the community leaders, you get the buy-in of cultural leaders, you also get the buy-in of community influencers, in such communities. They will be the ones to pass the messages to the grassroots, and you will see the results.
Okay. Thank you. Um, I think there is no more questions. So I would just like to say thank you. It was my honor to host today's live. I would just like to make a final announcement that this program that Tabitha Empowerment Center is doing, Let's Chat, is a monthly Instagram live. and we hold these conversations every last Saturday of each month. So keep in touch, and to know more about us, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. Our handle for Facebook, Instagram is Tabitha Empowerment Center. For Twitter, you can reach out to us at the rate Tabitha Center. And thank you everybody for joining us today. To stay connected and keep the conversation going, do subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is at the rate Tabitha Empowerment Center. And we appreciate the time that you have given us. And thank you so much, Mr. Obaro, for giving us your such important time. And we are extremely grateful. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to me, and let's try to combat issues of femicide in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening.